Look at this. A little tiny hailstorm. Tiny, tiny, tiny pieces of ice. Not even a snowflake. Like the standing people are waving hello. Hello, standing people. To be a nature journalist, you don't need to be a scientist. You don't need to be an artist. You don't need to know the scientific binomial for every species. You don't even need to know what a scientific binomial is. You just need to come out into nature and experience and observe and record what you see. Sometimes you make connections. I'm looking at this rock and it's covered with moss. Now I know this green stuff is moss because I've been studying this for a few years. I don't know a whole lot, but baby steps, I learn little by little. But I can make a connection here. That rock in the puddle of water reminds me of an island. And as I look out into the woods and I see all those rocks covered with moss, they look like islands in a sea of leaves. Now I could, if I wanted to, just draw these rocks as they are. I don't even need to look at them closely and see what kind of moss is growing on them. I could just make the connection that right now, right here, today, I'm looking at these rocks and they're reminding me of islands in the sea. If these rocks are islands in a sea of leaves, then maybe this log is Long Island. This area is going to look very different come late spring because this whole woodsy floor is going to be covered with ferns. And how do I know that? Well, number one, here's last year's fern fronds poking up. You see a bunch of them laying on the ground. And I just walked by some tiny, tiny fiddleheads coming up everywhere. Howdy, Possum Patty here, and I'm nature journaling. Today on my nature journal page, I just made a little story out of what I saw when I took my walk. When the sun shines golden in the azure sky, and the number 6 winds chase the gray remnants of storm clouds away, and the standing people wave hello as I in my boots splash by, signs of spring are here to stay. When bright green fiddleheads poke up through the thawed ground, and what looks like an island in a river upon closer inspection is a mossy rock mound, and the little pellets of ice give me a shiver, I take one last look around and note, nature never fails to deliver. This is a different page than this one. Yesterday was quite technical, measuring the size of drizzle and rain, making a rain gauge and measuring with the meniscus, and putting in the shape of raindrops. And making a list of rain words. Today was quite whimsical. There are many different ways to respond to nature. How do you nature journal? I made a fun little page here. A moss is one of the oldest and simplest plants on earth. Moss have no sophisticated conducting tissues, no flowers, no seeds. But they are very ancient and very interesting. I brought in a piece of moss that was covering the rock. Mossy rocks. Mossy rock. Ooh, now I think, is this different than a brocade moss? I think it is. Got a little visitor. It was a very interesting little piece of moss. Looked like a fern. But it was growing across the ground, prostrate, creeping along. It did have little branches coming off of it though. This kind of moss is called a pleurocarp, the kind that creeps along and forms a big mat. This one looked like a little fern though, didn't it? Had these divisions opposite each other. It's called a pinnate pattern. I looked it up in a different book. This one is The Outstanding Mosses and Liverworts of Pennsylvania and Nearby States. And this one was written by Dr. Susan Munch. I've had the privilege to go on many botany walks with Dr. Munch. She is one of my favorite people to take a walk in the woods with. She amazes me though. She can carry, she's a tiny person, but she can carry this very large, heavy book around like it was a little pocket guide. Plants of Pennsylvania. She also became a character in one of my journals. Dr. Susan Munch became a character in my nature journal. I turned her into Dr. Schmatzenkahn. These are some of the things I've heard her say. Let's take the trail along the creek. It will be fun. Another thing she used to say is, "That's okay, I don't get poison ivy," as she walked through the poison ivy in open sandals. Because she was a trained botanist, she could get very technical. Sometimes when she'd start describing things, perhaps trying to tell one aster from another, people on the botany walk would start wandering away and looking at butterflies or caterpillars. And then you'd hear her yell, "Anyone interested in some cute tiny grass-like things?" instead of giving out all the pertinent scientific information. So that was today's nature journaling adventure. A little walk in the woods, a lot of whimsy and storytelling, a little science, a little research, and just some fun playing with some colored markers and some lettering. Do you have fun in your nature journal? I do. I don't set any rules. Every page can be different. Every page can be fun. Thanks for coming along today. Bye-bye.